This morning, if you just joined us, it's the Breakfast Show on Truth 96.1 FM, and we are transmitting from Duper Road Pays with Varney, the final guest on Serious Talk for very serious people. You see that with us already.
Thanks a lot, JKB, and of course we are extremely pleased to have with us this morning the head of the United Nations mission in Liberia, His Excellency Dr. Farid Zarif. Dr. Zarif has extensive experience in diplomatic, international and United Nations affairs. The UNSRSG is here this morning to talk about issues surrounding Homer's drawdown. The interview this morning has actually been segmented into two phases. The first phase will focus principally on the drawdown of the UN mission in Liberia, and then subsequently we will be talking about the UN at 70 and what does it mean for the war. So this morning, Dr. Zarif would like to say good morning and welcome to the Breakfast Show.
Good morning to you, and thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to appear on your program. But let me make a correction. I haven't obtained my doctor's degree as yet.
Oh, okay.
Well, thank you for
Thanks a lot for joining us this morning. You, based on research that we gather, you joined the UN sometime back in 1993, and you have served in several capacities. You served in Eritrea, you served in Sudan, you also served in Kosovo. And you come into Liberia. Before we move on to the substantive reason for which you are here this morning, let us get an insight as to your experience comparing and making the kind of contrast with those countries in Liberia.
But I have to add that I've also served in Liberia before.
Okay.
23 years ago during the Civil War, first Civil War. Looking back at the experience that I've gained in serving the United Nations in different contexts, political missions, humanitarian and peacekeeping operations, many aspects of what's happening in Liberia seem to be more or less the same as we have seen in other places. Countries emerging out of civil wars or conflicts with their neighbors, or as a result of just breakdown of state and failed states. Destruction of the social fabric within the society, a breach between those who govern and those who are being governed, separation between the people and those who rule, caused a lot of problems. As a result, that divide leads to conflicts that creates a lot of agony and civil war is the outcome of that. As a result of that, a lot of opportunity is lost. Many people are killed, thousands are displaced, and property worth of billions of dollars are destroyed. It takes a whole lot of time and energy and resources in order to bounce back and then bring things back to a normal state of affairs.
So your point is that we share similarities with those countries where you served?
Absolutely, that's what I wanted to say, that in Liberia, what you have experienced was a loss of confidence between people and the government. As a result, we had civil war, and in the process, many years and opportunities were lost.
Okay. The Homer drawdown has been actually happening in phases. The concern that have been coming up from the public is how confident is the UN that the security apparatus of Liberia can adequately handle the security of the state?
There have been a lot of effort made by the government of Liberia, supported by the international community, in order to build up the capacity of the Liberian security institutions, in order for them to take over the functions that the United Nations have been carrying out since its deployment back in 2013. As you know, at that point in time, we deployed 16,000 military and police force to Liberia in order to bring back a semblance of stability and calm. And over these years, the governments of Liberia, particularly the two cycles of Mrs. Johnson Sirleaf's government, have been investing a whole lot of energy, resources and efforts in order to build the capacity of the Liberian institutions for them to take over from the United Nations. And in tandem with the progress that has been achieved, the United Nations has been drawing down the strength of its military and police on the from Liberia and handing over responsibilities to the government.
So you don't see the constant confrontation with the police and the citizen as a threat for which you should prolong your mandate?
You know, there has been also tremendous progress in that area. The police have been undergoing extended reform measures in order to change the attitude toward their responsibilities. They have gathered now, in order to be effective and to be trusted by the population, they'll have to change the character of their existence from a police force to a police service.
Okay.
Community policing, for instance, is part of their new philosophy. They're trying to reach out. The decentralization is also part of that process.
What is the difference, the police force and the police service?
Well, to put it bluntly, a police force would be an instrument of suppression on the side of state, while a police service would be a tool of providing comfort, safety, security.
Which
to
one
the
do we have in
population.
Liberia?
Well, for a long period of time, it was just an instrument of suppression of people, sustaining the rule of the authorities. Now that transformation has started for police to become more a means of providing comfort and safety and security to the population at the same time that they discharge their responsibility towards protection of the state.
One will be thinking, as Omni is about to leave, what is the exit strategy of the UN to ensure that what you have done, the country does not relapse into conflict?
Our exit strategy started at the time of our deployment. For the very reasons that the United Nations came to Liberia, those were the reasons for which we have to do away and create the capacity within the Liberian institutions for them to take over from us. We have been working with the Liberian security institutions in order to build their capacity to provide training. But then there is a whole lot to be done on the side of the legislature as well. For instance, the security sector reform needs some basic formative documents, legal instruments to be adopted.
Talking about the firearms?
Are we talking about the Firearms Act? We're talking about the Liberia National Police Act. We're talking about the Border and Immigration Act.
Okay.
All these are before the legislature, and we are truly hopeful that there will be quick action taken by the representatives of the people in the assembly.
The big question, like Liberians have said, we are not secure in the hands of our own security forces. Therefore, we want Omio to stay a little longer, perhaps onto the period of the 2017 elections. What has been the take of the UN on that?
Well, I think this is a perception that we have to deal with very seriously. If that's the opinion of the majority of the people, then the police will have to do a whole lot of work with the communities to change that perception. By being available, by trying to serve them, by being responsive to their needs, by providing security and protection to them, instead of sustaining that impression of being a force of suppression. So that's why we have been insisting along the lines of the President of Liberia herself, who has been pleading and pushing the police to deploy to the leeward locations and to be available to serve the police. So for as long as that perception prevails, the population will not be supporting the activities of the police. The police has come to realize that point. They are reaching out, they have developed a strategy of outreach with the communities, and we are seeing some signs of good, important signs of cooperation between the police and the
So this concern is a perception and not a reality?
What perceptions are half the reality, and there is a history behind that, and for that reason people would like to see evidence of change before they change their perception.
Moving on forward, you've served extensively now. The UN has been around. We will be thinking over the years of service in Liberia, what have been some of the challenges? Do you see the environment as hostile, or what can you say?
There have been many challenges, but the most important one, threat of a civil war, is now behind us, which is very important. There is stability, and for the past 12 years we haven't had any conflict. So the main important duty is for now to sustain that stability and calm, and use the opportunity of that calm in order to look after economic issues and rebuilding the social fabric, and then creating an environment where the government becomes more responsive towards the needs of the population, and to provide opportunities for the vast majority of the people to join the economic sector and to become productive. And this cannot be done unless the President's reform agenda is implemented. She has been talking about local governance, she has been talking about decentralization, she has been talking about the land rights. All of these measures are foundations for a fundamental transformative change in Liberia, where the people will be given the opportunity to become part of the mainstream, to have a say in the shaping of their affairs, and to participate in sharing of wealth and opportunities in the country.
Now, I mean, fun. Now that Liberians are yearning that you even stay, you should not leave Liberia. Do they have any reason? Do they have any cause to be afraid, to have fear for their own security, to man their security after you should have left?
I think the main thing that they should be afraid of is the fear itself. They should have more confidence in themselves, and they should have more confidence in the security institutions of Liberia. As you know, there is no war going to be prepared in any of the neighboring countries to be launched against Liberia. So if there is any threat to peace and security in Liberia, it emanates from factors inside Liberia. If Liberians decide to reject the concept of war and violence, then no one can impose it upon them. It is a responsibility that they have to understand. They should not just look at the police or the BIN or the AFL to look after security duties. They have to participate actively in maintaining law and order and defeating the efforts of some maverick who comes in order to excite the population in order to mess up things.
There is a view many Liberians shared, which was caused when UNAMSIL was in Freetown, Sierra Leone. Many Sierra Leoneans share that view that when the UN comes up to say we are pulling out because the place is now safe and secure, it is not really that the place is safe and secure, but rather the UN, you have conflict, you have emerging conflict in other regions, so you want to cut down the spending. This is something.
Economization and prioritization of UN operation is a fact, because there are too many conflicts around the world and very few resources. So you need to really put your troops and your resources where they're most needed. Liberia has made a tremendous and remarkable progress, and Liberia is not one of the war-stricken countries anymore, and there is now national capacity adequate to respond to occasional threats to stability. I think it's very, very important for people to know that there has to be a time when a nation takes over its own matters. It's a question of national pride also. You can't really continuously rely upon the international community, foreigners, to come and do what is inherently and naturally the responsibility of the nation itself. And Liberians have recognized that the government is very, very confident about their ability, and they're determined to go ahead and take over.
What is the success story of the UN over the years?
The success story of the UN cannot be separated from the success story of the Liberian people and of the Liberian government. They have worked together in order to make the relapse to war impossible. They have worked together in order to rebuild the institutions of the Liberian government and to create a new terms of reference and context in the relations between the people and the government of Liberia. And that's very, very important. For as long as there is no trust between the government and the people, there is always reason for violence.
You served once as presidential advisor on international affairs, I'm sure, to the president of Afghanistan. What advice can you put for when it comes to the issue about security issue and then relating it to international affairs to Liberia?
I think the best advice I would give to the leadership and also to the people of Liberia is that they have to understand that this is their home. This is the place where they share their destiny with each other. And they should share the responsibility as well towards everything. For the government, because it has the means, the potential, they have to provide the service that any government is naturally expected to provide to the people. And for the people to...
Has that been the view of the UN? Is it happening?
Well, there is always something left to be desired, not just in Liberia, but everywhere. But I see a whole lot of sincere effort being made by the President, by members of the Cabinet, in order to address those shortcomings. Success is measured by vast participation by all, and hopefully that's going to happen gradually.
When the UN is, you want to come in, Jacob?
Yeah, some of the projects only engaged into in Liberia, they refer to it as quick impact project. You can tell us why you name it that way, and can you tell us some of the projects that you undertook in Liberia through your mission? Yeah,
the reason we call it quick impact project is that these are not long-term, basic, heavy investments into infrastructure and stuff. These are projects that bring about results almost immediately upon implementation within literally few weeks or very few months. And these are meant to address some of the critical areas of gaps. For instance, in the context of decentralization, the security forces had the problem of accommodation and facilities, mobility and other stuff. So using the small amounts of money that the UN has for quick impact projects, we tried to rehabilitate police stations around the country, the BIN offices, the prisons, in order to enable the police and all the other elements of the security to deploy and start that work. And even in the context of our drawdown, we are leaving behind our facilities, our equipment, and office furniture, generators, air conditioners and stuff, in order to enable the police and the BIN colleagues to deploy immediately without waiting for the government to allocate money that doesn't exist now, unfortunately.
You agree with me that our government have got challenges, and as the UN pulls out of the country, there are mounting expectation. People have started asking about when the UN is leaving, those vehicles, the chapters you've been using over the years in Liberia, what do you intend to do with those things?
My position is that everything that we have brought here for the purpose of delivering our mandate in Liberia should stay behind, unless these are assets that we cannot transfer.
The chapels, the vehicles, everything will be left with the government?
We will be looking at the whole inventory of all the items that we have here, including the facilities that we have built for ourselves and all the equipment that we have brought in. We look at all of them and hopefully we'll leave behind literally everything that we can dispense of.
So we can be assured of that?
Well, already started. It has already started. When we withdrew from the last four stations, we produced a list of items that we would leave behind.
Yeah. The reason I'm asking this question is that we have been in existence as a country for decades upon decades and can't boast of a single chapel. So my point is the fact that the UN served here for a couple of years now and you are leaving, so Liberians can be confident that when you shall have left, we can say Liberia can now boast of a chapel, Liberia can now boast of certain equipment to enhance maybe the security apparatus.
That's true. That's true. Exactly. We will not take anything with us unless it's not allowed under the terms of the United Nations regulations.
And if you were to say what it cost the UN over the years serving in Liberia, what would you say? What has it cost the UN?
What is the cost?
Yeah, in terms of monetary,
value and all this.
I think it's in the tone of several $billion.
$7 billion.
Several billion.
Several billion.
Billion, because the cost of maintaining troops is very heavy. It costs a whole lot to maintain troops because these are monies that are paid back to the troop contributor countries. And in addition to that, of course, the salaries of the staff, the projects that have been implemented, the deployment costs, all of it runs to several $billion.
Before we move on to talk about the UN at 70,
let me go back to you. You've been withdrawing your troops from around the country and other places. Given the emotional aspect of when you get there to get the troops from these various counties and various points where they have been deployed,
the citizens, how do they respond to that?
I've been traveling around Liberia, attending town hall meetings in several countries now. Yesterday I was in Zwedro, bidding farewell to the police formed units of India. And in the process I interacted with a number of Liberians. They did express some apprehension and concern about a perceived vacuum that will be created. But I had to be very honest with them that their perception is not entirely correct. The Liberian institutions have really built up upon that capacity to step in and to take over responsibilities. And the UN is not going to cut and run. We will be around. We will be still having 1,240 troops here and 606 police officers.
Up to elections period?
That is a decision that will be taken by the Security Council this coming December, but at least beyond the 30th of June we will have that capacity still in Liberia. And it doesn't have to be in the form of peacekeepers that the UN will remain in support of Liberia. There are other soft ways of continuing our engagement and providing support to the Liberians.
Before we transition to talk about the UN at 70, there is this issue about monitoring when you are out of the scene. How do you intend to monitor the situation in Liberia?
We will have presence here. The Security Council will decide in December which way to go with UNMIL. But I'm very confident that it would not be a complete withdrawal of the United Nations from Liberia.
Okay.
The United Nations agencies, funds and programs will definitely stay behind, of course, and probably that would even increase their activities. And there would be some other form of the United Nations presence beyond the lifespan of UNMIL.
But they can respond to a situation that will arise regarding a little maybe response or so.
I don't think that we are hoping for such a thing to happen.
Mm-hmm.
In the first place. My calculations that Liberia will continue to remain stable and calm, but then should there be a situation, there is also capacity within Liberia to respond. If then situation develops to the extent of reaching limits that are beyond the capacity of the Liberians, then that would be a new development.
The UN at 70, let us transition now. The UN at 70, what does it mean for the world?
For us, it means a point of reflection to look at how we have handled our responsibilities under the Charter, where we have been successful and where we have failed. What are the reasons for our failure, and how can we do better? So that's a good opportunity, both for us, also for the international community who are owners of the United Nations. Together, we will be drawing some lessons, as we did also last year. There was a very comprehensive review of the peace operations. There was also a comprehensive review of the peace building structure and of women's participation in peace and security matters. So all of these assessments are carried out in order to develop a better analysis of how we have performed in the past.
If you were to talk about the threat confronting the world today that the UN is confronted with in trying to address, you have terrorism, you have climate change and other issues. What is the UN really focusing on at this point in time?
You know, we have all reached the conclusion that we cannot really be chasing the ghosts of war around the world forever, because there are too many of them and the number is going to increase. Therefore, the best strategy for the future is prevention. To keep your eyes on the ground and to look at the dynamics, the drivers of conflict, and step in, prevent the conflict from emerging rather than wait and then handle it once the war has broken out. So the challenge of humanity is not just matters of peace and security, it's also climatical change in the world. As you know, last year the Secretary General succeeded in bringing a consensus in the international community, and this year they met in Paris and signed a very, very important agreement committing the members of the international community to work towards reducing the emission.
In one of your speeches, you called for a strong United Nations.
Yes.
Does it imply that we don't have a strong United Nations currently?
Strength does not just mean numbers, it means influence, ability to impact on policies and strategies. It means turning the UN as a strong convening authority where the efforts of the international community could reach a point of synergy and coherence. That's what we mean.
And in that speech, you also envisaged a war, a peaceful war. And I was thinking when I read through the speech, how possible can this be when we have global powers with competing interests?
I think we are lucky to see now signs of multilateralism increasingly getting hold. In the past, probably the influence of national agenda was greater, but it seems that wisdom is prevailing and nations of the world are trying to find common grounds in order to work with each other. Look at the case of Syria, for instance, where there was a big division of opinion between different countries sitting on the council. Now they're trying to work together in order to find a common solution. The division between Iran and the West, that has also been addressed. Look at the separation of Cuba for a long time, and the sanctions. Now that has been bridged. So increasingly you're seeing signs of people in diverse parts of the world, understanding the need for working together in order to solve problems that are affecting humanity.
You are cognizant that the UN is supposed to defend human rights in spite of your religion, in spite of what kind of affiliation you have. But sometimes Africans feel targeted.
Well, absolutely. Human rights is the foundation of peace and stability. You can't expect stability and peace without human rights prevailing. Justice is the foundation of peace and calm. That's why the UN agenda for putting human rights in the center of all of its activities as a cross-cutting issue is based on that philosophy that you have to promote human rights and address issues of separation, denial, in order to maintain the social coherence in the society.
Can you clearly say the UN has been able to live up to the purpose for which she was formed? Can you clearly say that?
Well, that's relative. I don't think that we will ever be satisfied with our progress. But it's important to understand that under what circumstances we have been trying to implement our mandate. Given the obstacles, given the limitation of resources, I think we have done a good job in many spheres. Look at the quality of life in terms of eradication or reduction of poverty. Look at eradication of a number of diseases affecting children and mothers. Look at the strides that have been made in the area of transfer of technology. And all of these things are very important achievements, but then wars are still being waged. And one of the reasons is that we are waiting until the war is broken out instead of stepping in before it breaks out.
So we can amount that to deficiency on the part of the UN?
Probably deficiency, not just on the part of the UN, lack of consensus on which way to deal with such situations. Particularly at the time of the Cold War, there were many factors that were working in the direction of exacerbating tension in countries in the context of rivalry between East and West. And hopefully now we are going to get out of that mindset and bring about a consensus where all nations of the world could work together in order to contain situations and would not allow them to drift into the war.
The UN at 70 and the call for a female SG. What's your take on that?
That's a matter for the for the council and for the General Assembly to decide. But then,
but my point is, Mr. Zarif,
yes,
the UN has been in existence. This is 70 years now of existence, and you don't have a single person who has served as SG being a female.
I personally strongly support full and equitable participation of women at all levels of authority, be it in the United Nations or in governments around the world or in society. And I'm glad that I work in a country where we have a female head of state.
A female head of state whose name is also being flagged. I don't know where you stand on that.
I haven't seen that. Probably it's an idea.
It's being flagged among those females whose name are being mentioned.
Okay.
Our president's name is being mentioned, so I don't know where you stand on that.
She has very strong credentials. She has very strong credentials, and I think
if she try moving on, you think she could emerge?
I wouldn't be able to really make an assessment of the views of members of the Security Council because they're the ones who will first give their blessings before the matter is bounced off to the General Assembly. But then I would.
But your view is that our president have got the credential for such a task.
Absolutely, she does. Absolutely, she does. And there are very strong candidates also in other regions of the world. We are told increasingly that it's a turn for a woman and also it's a turn for a certain region. So these issues will be, of course, a subject of discussion in the Council when names are put forward by member states.
Before we run to the line to take few calls quickly, Mr. Zarif, I'm sure there are issues perhaps we did not ask you want to flag. Eh?
Well, I want to address the people of Liberia that opportunities like this will not always present themselves. They have had 12 years of calm and peace, and they have had full solidarity of the international community. They should not take this for granted. They should not squander this opportunity. They have a leader that's very committed to change, a change that's fundamental and transformative. It is very important for the people to rally behind the transformative agenda of the president and support the president through talking to their own representatives and senators, appealing to them to provide that necessary support from the side of the legislature in order to embed all these bright and very brilliant ideas into legislation that would pave the way for creating a society in Liberia where everybody has an opportunity to participate in matters of determination of the future of Liberia, in shaping the economy, and having an opportunity to work for themselves and for their families.
Okay. I think we can go to the line and get the interaction from the public.
Take a few calls from the public, and then we'll call it a quick 07771730015, 07771730015, 0776561.
This morning we are in conversation with the head of the UN mission in Liberia.
As they depart Liberia, come to share with us a breakfast today. So you can begin calling now. We'll take a few calls and we'll go back to him. He's a very busy man, removing his troops from around the country and from Bapulu, from if you follow the discussion so you can make some informed contribution. You just cleared it out. Liberians, you got no cause to fear. Your security agency or forces should be in control of your security. While we are waiting for Varney, you can go right back.
And he also struck the point about citizens also playing that role of participating in the peace process of also. But another issue that I actually did not bring up is what does it take when mediators sit on the table with warriors to discuss peace issues? You have been there before.
I think the first why they disagree, and to carefully listen to everybody's grievances, and then start searching for common grounds between them. There has to be a small opening point where they could agree with each other, enabling them to start trusting one another and work together towards a shared objective. That's the key thing.
Okay, let's take a call here. Good morning. Good morning. I'm sure you've been listening to the program. Make your point. Yeah, you're welcome. Hello? Hello? Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead quickly.
Okay. You want to appreciate something?
Okay. He's appreciating the UN for being around.
Well, thank you very much. It's an honor to have served you.
Thank you so much. 07771730015. No time in our favor. We want to take your calls as quick as possible so we can get going from this studio. Yes, another caller. Good morning.
Good morning, JKB.
Good morning. It's good to have you.
Yes. Good morning to the SRSG studio, and good morning to the people of Liberia. My name is Charles Brown. I'm calling from Buja Island. I want to say a very big thank you to the Ombil family, that's doing well for Liberia, and we want to commend them very highly. And we just want to tell SRSG that Liberia security is not here up to how it should be. So we want to recommend to him that he inform the Security Council at least that Ombil cannot completely depart this country because we have a very serious transition coming 2017, and we think the president of Ombil, at least to some extent, will be able to help us to smoothly go through the transitional process. Thank you very much.
I think this question, JKB, we actually come in something that will help political parties, because this is something recent. In recent days, political parties have been fronting the mysterious deaths of individuals in Liberia. Political parties are attributing this to the fact that we are still not secure yet.
What I think for the past few years, it hasn't been UNMIL troops who have been providing security. It has been the Liberian institutions doing the job. We have been here, but more in
what have been your role?
Of a deterrence. Capacity building is one, and then also providing support in the event matters run out of control. And that has not happened, thankfully, not in any gross form. So let's give credit to the Liberian.
So the political party that is calling for you to extend your mandate based on these mysterious deaths, you don't see that as a substantive reason?
We will have an opportunity to sit down with them and to listen to them, but frankly speaking, I don't think that the presence of the peacekeepers here will have any impact on matters like mysterious deaths and stuff. That's a police function, and we are working with the police to help them investigate the matter and try to chase the clues and arrest the perpetrators.
Okay.
If it is a murder.
Let's take a call. Good morning.
Good morning, Deputy. Good morning, Varney.
Good morning.
Well, this is Abu Jiro Kamachi, and I'm judging from the Center of Conflict, the Cerebral Railway. Let me appreciate the SRD pursuing the exercise to some information related to the security in our country. But as DKB and Varney, my disappointment comes from an angle where the president addressed the Congress to go and he publicly said that the country is safe. And having said that, if we spend 1 week, we saw one of the 6 men who raised $1 million from the federal government. What is the uniform that we have of our assessment? Then you just this I told you also well off the bill. A few days ago I was at Capricorn and my baby we saw a dead body. As soon as we came on 3 junction, well off the hill that we have.
So how do you want to correlate this now to the discussion? How do you want to link this with the discussion?
So why do you say insurance?
Because it's about population system. So I think that the government is not going to always allow
Okay.
to draw down if the guy do.
Okay, the point is clear.
To let the government know that the government is not to them for honor to draw down if the guy do.
The central idea has been understood. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We can take just a call now.
Just a call.
Yeah, maybe just a call. Good morning. Okay. No call, man. No time.
And you are expected to serve as keynote speaker at this year's Armed Forces Day celebration.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. On matter of relationship between the security issues where peacekeepers are needed and crimes that are committed in cities. Let me clarify that crimes are committed everywhere in the world, even in the largest and most powerful nations on earth. There are lots of crimes committed. So that does not necessarily lead to the deployment of peacekeepers. So in Liberia, mysterious death is a totally separate matter from the need for the deployment of peacekeepers.
And like I said, you are expected to serve as keynote speaker at this year's
Yes.
Armed Forces Day celebration. Hope we have now entered into some component of the speech. I hope we've not preempted your speech that you'll be delivering.
And we'll go there. It's a pleasure to have been invited as keynote speaker, and we'll take a look at the roles and functions that AFL has played in the past and will be expected to play in the future. And I'm glad that they're recasting themselves as a very, very relevant component of the Liberia's security structure, seeing themselves as servants of the people in defense of the state of Liberia, and trying to find a better niche for themselves to do their job.
Did you inherit a good leadership from Karen Lagren when you took over?
Certainly, she's one of formidable stars of the United Nations, and I pay a lot of tribute to her legacy. She has laid good foundation, has left behind a good legacy.
Okay. Any concluding statement you want to proffer before we take leave of you, Mr. SRSG?
Well, I thank you very much for this opportunity. I want once again to appeal to the Liberian people to take ownership of their country, to feel responsible for everything. They should not just look at the government to provide everything for themselves. They have a role to play in providing security. They have a role to play in improving their quality of life through agriculture, through entrepreneurship, whatever is possible they should do, and should not expect the government to do everything for them.
Thank you.
It was good having you. Thank you for sharing breakfast with us.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Okay, sir.